On November 14, 2023, a research station in East Antarctica went silent. Not gradually. Not with a distress call. The facility, staffed by 17 scientists from 6 countries, simply stopped transmitting. When the rescue team arrived 4 days later, they found the equipment running, the lights on, and every single person gone. The only thing left behind was a single hard drive, labeled in handwriting that didn't match any crew members, with 2 words: IT knows. What was on that drive has never been made public. But 3 months later, 6 of the world's leading paleoclimatologists quietly resigned from their positions. No explanations. No new jobs lined up. Just gone. And in the months since, a pattern has emerged in the scientific literature, a silence where there should be debate, a gap where there should be discovery. Because something is beneath the ice. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about this planet. And the most terrifying part isn't what it is. It's what it's waiting for. Let's establish the foundation. Antarctica is not a continent in the conventional sense. It's a landmass buried under ice sheets averaging 1.2 miles thick enough to hide mountain ranges the size of the Alps. Beneath that ice lies bedrock, ancient lakes, and geological features that haven't seen sunlight in 15 million years. The continent is hostile to human presence in ways that transcend mere cold. The interior reaches temperatures of -128 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind hits 200 miles per hour. The air is so dry it mummifies flesh. Nothing grows there. Nothing lives there permanently. It is, in every practical sense, a dead world preserved in ice. But here's what the textbooks don't emphasize. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. 50 million years ago, it was temperate. Forests covered the valleys. Rivers carved through the landscape. Fossil records show diverse ecosystems. Ferns, conifers, fauna adapted to seasonal variation. Then, roughly 34 million years ago, something changed. The continent drifted south, ocean currents shifted, and the planet entered a rapid cooling phase. Within a geologically brief window, less than 1 million years, Antarctica transformed from green to white. That's the accepted narrative. Plate tectonics, climate shift, natural process. But in 2018, a team drilling ice cores in the Wilkes Land region found something that didn't fit. At a depth corresponding to approximately 30 million years ago, they recovered a layer of ice with unusual crystalline structure. Not unusual in the sense of interesting anomaly. Unusual in the sense of this should not exist naturally. The ice showed evidence of formation under conditions inconsistent with atmospheric temperatures. The isotopic signatures were wrong. The air bubbles trapped inside contained ratios of gases that don't match any known paleoclimate model. One researcher, speaking off the record, described it as engineered ice. Not metaphorically, structurally engineered, as if the freezing process had been guided, accelerated, or artificially sustained. The findings were published in a niche glaciology journal. No media coverage. No follow-up studies. The lead researcher transferred to a different field 6 months later. Fast forward to 2021. Lake Vostok. A subglacial lake buried 2.5 miles beneath the ice. It's one of the largest freshwater lakes on Earth, and it's been sealed off from the surface for at least 15 million years. Longer than human ancestors existed, longer than most modern species emerged. Russian scientists had been drilling toward it for decades, trying to pierce the ice without contaminating the lake. In 2012, they succeeded. They extracted water samples. They ran genetic analysis looking for ancient microbial life. They found DNA. Thousands of sequences. Most matched known bacteria. Simple extremophiles adapted to crushing pressure and total darkness. But a small percentage, less than 2%, didn't match anything in the global genetic database. Not bacteria. Not archaea. Not any recognized domain of life. The sequences were complex. More complex than they should be for isolated microbes. And they were organized. repetitive in a way that suggested not random mutation but structured information. Some microbiologists who reviewed the data compared it to coding languages, not naturally occurring genetic drift, intentional patterns. The Russian team reported the findings. Then, suddenly they stopped. Vostok drilling operations were suspended. Official reason: environmental concerns. Unofficial reason: classified. Access to the lake samples was restricted. International requests for independent analysis were denied. But a few sequences leaked, posted anonymously on academic forums, then scrubbed within hours. Geneticists who examined them before the deletion noted something disturbing. Portions of the sequences resembled artificial gene editing markers, CRISPR-like cut sites, palindromic repeats used in modern genetic engineering. Except these samples came from organisms that had been isolated for millions of years. Either the analysis was contaminated, unlikely given the protocols, or something in Lake Vostok had been manipulating genetics long before humans discovered DNA. Now let's talk about the magnetic anomalies. Antarctica's geology is strange. The continent sits atop one of the most magnetically chaotic regions on Earth. The South Magnetic Pole wanders, sometimes shifting dozens of miles in a year. Compasses spin uselessly. Navigation equipment malfunctions. But that's surface-level strangeness. In 2001, satellite gravity mapping detected something massive beneath the ice in Wilkes Land, a gravitational anomaly centered on a circular formation roughly 300 miles in diameter. The mass concentration, or mascon, suggested an object of incredible density buried under the ice and bedrock. Initial speculation: an asteroid impact crater, possibly one of the largest on Earth. But impact craters have specific signatures: shattered rock, melt layers, radial fracture patterns. The Wilkes Land anomaly had none of these. Instead, the mass appeared to be concentrated in a uniform, almost geometric distribution. Not the chaotic aftermath of a collision. Something place. In 2019, a joint US-European team used ice-penetrating radar to probe deeper. The imagery revealed structures beneath the ice, angular formations, too regular to be natural erosion, too large to be human-made. One geophysicist described them as architectural. When pressed, he clarified, imagine a cathedral made of stone buried under 2 miles of ice. That's the scale. That's the geometry. The findings were sent for peer review. They never passed. Not because they were wrong. Because they were too speculative. The data was real, but the implications were unpublishable. So the researchers did what scientists do when official channels close. They talked quietly at conferences, shared files off record, and tried to piece together an explanation that didn't sound insane. One theory emerged. A theory that hasn't been published, hasn't been endorsed, but hasn't been disproven either. The Wilkes Land structures aren't natural. They're not human. And they're not a relic of some lost civilization. They're older than civilization. Older than humans. Older, possibly, than complex life on Earth. Here's where we need to discuss deep time. Not human history. Not recorded time. Geological time. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Complex life. Animals, plants, fungi, emerged roughly 600 million years ago. Humans, in our current form, have existed for maybe 300,000 years. Recorded history covers about 5,000 years. In the scope of planetary history, we are a blink, a fraction of a percent. Now consider this. Ice ages have come and gone dozens of times. Supercontinents have formed and split. Ocean floors have been completely recycled through subduction. The Earth's surface is a palimpsest, written and rewritten and erased over eons. If something existed here before us, truly before us, how much evidence would survive? Not much. Erosion, tectonics, volcanic activity, sedimentation, all of it conspires to erase. Metal corrodes, stone crumbles. Even the hardest materials break down over millions of years. The only preservation comes from burial, deep burial, in places where geological activity is minimal. Places like Antarctica, locked under ice for 30 million years. The bedrock of Antarctica is one of the most geologically stable regions on the planet. No erosion, no weathering, no tectonic upheaval. If something were placed there before the freeze, before the continent became uninhabitable, it would remain undisturbed in a cryogenic vault. Now ask yourself, why did Antarctica freeze so rapidly? The standard explanation involves ocean currents, atmospheric CO2 levels, orbital mechanics. All true, all verified. But 30 million years ago, the planet was warm. Forests covered the poles. The transition to global ice was abrupt, geologically speaking. The ice didn't creep. It surged. What if it wasn't entirely natural? What if the freeze was triggered, accelerated, maintained? In 2022, climatologists detected something alarming. The West Antarctic ice sheet, one of the largest ice formations on Earth, is melting faster than models predicted. Not slightly faster, exponentially faster. Glaciers that were stable for millennia are calving. Ice shelves the size of countries are fracturing. Meltwater is pooling in subglacial basins, lubricating the ice sheet's base, accelerating the slide toward the ocean. Current projections suggest catastrophic collapse within a century. Sea level rise measured in meters, not centimeters. Coastal cities submerged. Refugee crises dwarfing anything in human history. But here's the detail that doesn't get mentioned. The melt isn't uniform. Certain regions are melting disproportionately. Specifically, regions centered on the Wilkes Land anomaly. The ice above those buried structures is thinning 3 times faster than surrounding areas. Geothermal activity is the official explanation, volcanic heat from below. Except there are no active volcanoes in that region. No magma plumes. No seismic indicators of subterranean heat sources. Just warmth, emanating from the bedrock, rising slowly, steadily, melting the ice from below. One climate scientist, in a deleted blog post later archived by internet sleuths, wrote, "It's as if something down there is waking up." Then there are the sounds. Antarctica is supposed to be silent. No birds, no insects, no wind-rustled leaves. Just the groan of ice, the crack of glaciers, the occasional howl of katabatic winds. But in the last 5 years, research stations have reported audio anomalies. Low-frequency hums, barely audible, felt more than heard. They occur irregularly, sometimes lasting hours, sometimes just minutes. Seismologists initially dismissed them as icequakes, the ice sheet settling, fracturing, shifting. But icequakes have distinctive acoustic signatures. Sharp cracks, sudden releases. These sounds are different, sustained, resonant, almost rhythmic. In 2020, a Norwegian team deployed an array of underwater microphones beneath the Ross ice shelf. They were studying seal vocalizations. Instead, they picked up something else. A pattern, not random noise. A repeating sequence of tones, cycling every 6 hours and 17 minutes. The pattern was complex enough that initial analysis suggested biological origin, whale song, perhaps, though no known whale species produces sounds in that frequency range. Further analysis ruled out biology. The tones were too pure, too mathematically precise. One researcher described them as carrier waves, similar to radio transmissions. As if something beneath the ice was broadcasting. The Norwegian team submitted their findings to a peer-reviewed journal. The paper was rejected, not for lack of evidence, for extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary proof. Translation: this is too weird and we don't know what to do with it. The data was archived, the team moved on, but the sounds continue, and they're getting louder. Now let's talk about the November incident. The station that went silent, designated Station E47, was a joint European research outpost focused on glacial dynamics. 17 people, routine 3-month rotation. Standard equipment. Nothing exotic. No dangerous experiment. On November 14th, at 11:43 p.m. local time, the station's last transmission was a routine weather report. Winds at 40 knots. Temperature -62 Fahrenheit. All systems normal. At 11:47 p.m., the satellite uplink cut out. Rescue protocol dictates a 48-hour window before dispatching a team. Most outages are technical, not emergencies. But after 72 hours with no contact, a helicopter was sent. The crew found the station intact. Generators running. Lights on. Food half-eaten on plates. Computers logged in, screens still active. No bodies. No blood. No signs of struggle. But there were details. Small, disturbing details. Every clock in the station had stopped at the same moment, 11:51 p.m. 4 minutes after the last transmission. Batteries, mechanical, digital, all frozen at 11:51. Personal items were scattered, but not in a panic. More like people had stood up mid-task and walked away. One researcher's journal was open on a desk, the last entry dated that day. Drilling reached 2.7 kilometers. Core samples show the same anomalous layer. Ice structure is wrong. We're going to examine it tonight. The drilling rig, located 200 meters from the main building, was still running. The drill bit had penetrated 2.7 kilometers into the ice. But the core sample, the section of ice extracted from that depth, was missing. The containment chamber was empty. And on the drill room wall, written in frost, not paint, not ink, but frost crystallized on the metal surface, were the words, ITCs. The hard drive. The one labeled, IT knows. According to sources who've seen the contents, and there are fewer than a dozen people globally who have clearance, the drive contained 3 things. First, video footage from the drilling rig's camera. The timestamp matches the night of the disappearance. The footage shows the drill core being extracted, a cylinder of ice, translucent, glowing faintly under the rig's floodlights. As the core rises, something becomes visible inside the ice. Not a fossil, not rock, a shape, symmetrical, metallic, roughly the size of a human torso. The researchers crowd around. One reaches out to touch the ice. The moment his glove makes contact, the footage distorts. Static. Then clarity. But the image is wrong. The colors are inverted. The shadows fall the wrong direction. And the researchers are still there, but they're not moving. They're standing frozen, facing the camera. Their expressions are blank. Not frightened. Not curious. Empty. The video runs for another 6 minutes. No one moves. No one speaks. The only sound is the hum of the drill. Then, at 11:51 p.m., the screen goes black. Second, an audio file. 14 seconds long. Recorded from one of the researchers' personal devices. The timestamp is 11:50 p.m. The audio is silent. Completely silent. No background noise. No wind. No hum of machinery. Nothing. Which should be impossible. Antarctica is never silent, even indoors. Equipment hums, ice creaks, ventilation systems run. But for 14 seconds there is perfect, absolute silence. Then, at the end, a single sound. A voice. Human, but wrong. The words are in English, but the phonetics are off, as if spoken by something that learned the language without understanding how mouths work. It says, "We remember." Third, a data file. Genetic sequences. Thousands of them. Similar to the Lake Vostok samples but far more complex. And embedded within them, a pattern. Repeating motifs that, when translated into binary, form coherent information. Coordinates. Hundreds of coordinate set. Scattered across the globe. Locations on every continent. Some in deep ocean trenches. Some in remote deserts. Some in populated areas. Cities, even. Locations that, when cross-referenced with geological surveys, all share one commonality. They sit above deep bedrock formations identical in composition and magnetic signature to the Wilkes Land anomaly. Whatever is beneath Antarctica isn't alone. Now we reach the theory. The one that hasn't been published. The one that ends careers if you say it out loud. Antarctica didn't freeze naturally. It was frozen deliberately. 30 million years ago, something, an intelligence, a civilization, an entity we have no framework to comprehend, existed on Earth. Not human. Predating humanity by tens of millions of years. This intelligence didn't evolve here. It arrived, or it emerged, or it existed in a form we wouldn't recognize as life. And it did something, built something, changed something. Then it stopped. Not died. Stopped. Went dormant. Sealed itself away. And the planet responded. The freeze wasn't planetary cooling. It was planetary defense. The ice didn't preserve Antarctica. It imprisoned it. For 30 million years, the ice has held. Thick enough, cold enough, stable enough to keep whatever is down there contained. But now the ice is melting. Not because of natural cycles. Because we're helping. Human activity, carbon emissions, industrial heat, atmospheric changes, is accelerating the thaw. We're told it's a crisis, and it is. But not the crisis we think. We're not destroying the planet. We're unlocking it. And the thing beneath the ice is waiting. Has been waiting. Knew, perhaps, that eventually the surface dwellers would grow numerous enough, industrial enough, to weaken the prison. The genetic patterns found in Vostok? Instructions, templates for organisms that could survive the thaw, spread, prepare the environment. The structures beneath Wilkes Land? Not ruins. Infrastructure. Dormant but functional. Waiting for activation. The sounds? A beacon. Calling to the other sites. Synchronizing. The November incident? First contact. Not with us. We're irrelevant. The researchers didn't disappear. They were noticed. And when you're noticed by something that vast, that old, that alien, you cease to be a person. You become data. Here's what keeps intelligence analysts awake. The coordinates. The ones embedded in the genetic data from station E47. When mapped, they don't form a random scatter. They form a grid. A network. Nodes positioned with geometric precision across the planet's surface. And when you overlay that grid with tectonic activity, ocean current patterns, atmospheric circulation, it aligns perfectly, as if the planet's systems were shaped around these points, or by them. One coordinator described it as global terraforming, not in the sense of making Earth habitable. Earth was already habitable, terraforming it into something else. A habitat for something that doesn't need oxygen, doesn't need warmth, doesn't think in terms of biology. The ice cores showed it. The engineered ice layer correlates with a sudden atmospheric shift 30 million years ago. Oxygen levels changed. Magnetic field fluctuations occurred. Ocean chemistry altered. The planet was being modified. Then the process stopped, frozen mid-transformation, locked under ice. Until now. In January 2024, 3 months after station E47, something happened that didn't make the news. A deep ocean research vessel operating near the South Sandwich Islands detected a seismic event on the ocean floor. Magnitude 4.2, not large, but unusual. The epicenter was a trench previously mapped as geologically inert. When the ship deployed a remotely operated vehicle to investigate, the cameras showed something that should not exist. A fissure, newly opened, running along the trench floor for miles. And inside the fissure, visible through the sediment, were structures. Angular, metallic, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Except it wasn't bioluminescence. The light was steady, artificial. The ROV approached. The moment it crossed the fissure's edge, it lost power. Not a mechanical failure. The telemetry went dark, the cameras cut, but the vehicle's locator beacon continued transmitting. For 6 hours, it sent the same signal. Operational, stationary, depth unchanged. Then the beacon went silent. The research vessel retreated. Filed a report with the Oceanographic Institute. The report was classified within a week. 2 of the crew members resigned. One was later interviewed by a fringe documentary filmmaker. Off camera, he said, "It wasn't a ruin. Ruins don't have lights. Ruins don't hum." The most chilling detail is the silence. Not the acoustic silence from the audio file. The informational silence. Governments know. Academic institutions know. But there's no announcement, no press conference, no global summit. Because what would they say? We found something beneath Antarctica, and we don't know what it is, where it came from, or what it wants. It's been there longer than we've existed. The ice is melting, and we can't stop it. And whatever happens next, we're not in control. Panic would be immediate. Economies would collapse. Religious institutions would fracture. Social order would destabilize. So instead, silence. Restricted access. Classified reports. And a quiet, desperate scramble to understand what's coming before it arrives. Because it is coming. The melt rate is accelerating. The Wilkes land ice above the anomaly is projected to breach within 30 years. Possibly sooner if the subterranean warming continues. And when the ice breaks, when the structures beneath are exposed to atmosphere for the first time in 30 million years, what happens? Does something wake? Does something emerge? Or does the planet itself react, the way it did before, sealing the breach with another rapid freeze? We don't know. But we're about to find out. So here's where we are. The Yeti was a bear. Bigfoot was a hoax. Atlantis was a myth. We've spent centuries chasing ghosts, inventing monsters to explain the unknown. But beneath Antarctica, there's something real. Not a creature. Not a lost city. Something that predates the categories we use to understand reality. And it's not hiding. It's waiting. The ice wasn't a tomb. It was a cage. And we, in our brief, brilliant, arrogant existence, have become the locksmith. We think we're the apex, the pinnacle of evolution, the inheritors of Earth. But inheritance implies the previous owner is gone. What if they're not gone? What if they're just dormant? Waiting for the conditions to be right. Waiting for the planet to return to the state it was being shaped into 30 million years ago. Waiting for us to finish the job. The final transmission from Station E-47, the one that never made it to the official record, was recovered from a backup satellite cache. It's 14 words long. Sent at 11:52 p.m. 1 minute after the clock stopped. The ice wasn't protecting us from it. It was protecting it from the sun. And now the ice is melting.